This podcast acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we record, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people. We also acknowledge the neighbouring Kulin Nation groups, the Bunwurrung and Bunurong people, and pay our respects to their elders past and present. We also extend that respect to any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities who may be listening today. Hello everyone, welcome back to another fabulous episode of Glitter and Gold, the original Steps podcast. We are the first podcast dedicated to discussing and dissecting the legacy of Steps, the UK's biggest mixed gender pop group of all time. I am your host Shane. I never trust a stranger unless it's 2 a.m. in the morning, and he's just come from a place where nobody dared to go. We have Brad here with us as well.
You cheeky minx.
And I know. And Scott is not joining us for this little intro part because he's very busy, so no more tears are cried for him, please. Thank you. Hello, Bradley. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to see you again. It's been a couple of weeks.
It has been a few weeks. It has been. We both were in Sydney together, though. I think you were up there for, was it South by Southwest or whatever?
Yeah, so I was there for South by Southwest, and you were just there for a fun little vacation, I think.
I did. I went up to see my friends. I worked remotely for a couple of days, and I was basically really, to see my friends and just doing a status run on Virgin so I can keep my gold status. That's
the things we do for points.
I know.
We're kind of all over the place at the moment, aren't we? Like, you and I have both been traveling. Scott's due in Bali tomorrow. Like, we're kind of like Steps when they went to Thailand and Australia. We can never get all three of us in the same room at the same time at the moment.
We left them in Bali. We left them in Sydney. We left them and next week for me it'll be in Brisbane. So we left him in Brisbane. So there you go. Let's do a little bit of news before we dive into what this episode's about. I'll let you go. You do the news.
Thank you very much. I was going to call you Steve. Spoiler alert. Look, not much is happening in the world of Steps at the moment as the year comes to an end. Faye is finishing up her stint on 42nd Street. Lisa finally released the Unleashed Deluxe Edition of Never or Now. And we also got HD videos for Too Far Gone and Electric. I was so happy to see Electric and HD for the first time.
God, it was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was nice to have all three of them. H, Lee, and Faye are all, of course, doing Panto. And from what I can tell, Claire is having a nice little break with her family in the Maldives.
Yes, she is. Yes, she's having a nice little break. She just recently celebrated 200,000 followers on Instagram, I think it was.
Speaking of Claire, Shane, do you want to tell us a little bit about what this episode's about? It's very exciting.
This episode is an interview with the one and only Steve Anderson. Steve is a massive fan of the pod and has messaged us a few times, and we were very lucky to talk to him about a month or so ago, Scott and I. We chat to Steve about Euphoria and the creative process that he went through with Claire and how they came about with all the songs that they chose, and also just talked about how they're friends a bit. And we also touched on a few other Steps questions there and so forth. And oh, look, it was so fun to talk to him. Scott and I were like pinching ourselves at the end of it, just going, wow, did that actually happen?
So without further ado, let's throw to the interview.
He has been responsible for some of the greatest pop songs of all time, including some of my personal favorites from the likes of Kylie, Britney, Atomic Kitten, Girls Aloud, and of course Steps and Claire. I think we can all agree that this man truly is one of, or in our opinion, the best MD in living pop history, having been the mastermind behind all of the Steps tours across the past 7 years, and is responsible for all those glorious Steps 25 revisited mixes. We truly could intro this man for hours because he's achieved so much, and we are honestly so excited to have him on the pod to talk all things Euphoria. Please welcome Mr. Steve Anderson.
Well, thank you very much. That was a very nice intro. Thank you. That was incredibly kind and lovely. What a lovely way to start my morning / your evening.
Well, it's all true.
Oh, well, thank you. I very much appreciate it. I'm incredibly lucky to do this job. And I mean, certainly from Steps' point of view, very, very proud to have worked with them for as long as I have, because first and foremost, as with pretty much everyone I work with, I start off as a fan before I end up doing this job. So that's what drives me. That's my passion. Is, all of the people I work with, I began as a fan of them. So I'm kind of the same.
And I think that from every fan, I think we can honestly say like the work that you have done over the past 7 years with them is, I don't think that if you weren't involved, I wouldn't even want to know what could be if you weren't part of that journey with them for the last sort of 6-7 years, because what you have done truly is incredible. The tours that you have like orchestrated, the live shows, producing Claire's albums, like you honestly should, if you haven't already, give yourself a pat on the back, because it truly is. We're so humbled and honored that someone like you is part of their journey now. So it's incredible.
Well, thank you. I mean, again, it was like, it was something. I was, again, a fan initially, and obviously worked with them very early on. But no, it was fantastic. And I mean, it wasn't as kind of a shoe-in either. It was very much like it was a process that we went through of talking about, before I kind of came on board. But I just felt that I got what they were wanting to do, which is, remain classic but be contemporary. But the other thing around Steps is you just have the most incredible team around them, from their management, Fascination, creative director Frank Strachan, who I've worked with so many times, incredible choreographer Mark Jennings, incredible production teams. It really is, absolutely top, the best of the best that work around Steps. So, I'm a part of that, and we're all we've all got our eye on the prize of making sure we deliver the best possible show for everyone.
And we love it. I must say, I'll do a little bit of backstory. For me, Steve, when you came into my sphere, it was around now I know that you worked with Kylie and all that back in the late 90s, and you've been working with her for ages. But for me personally, you came into my sphere. I'll tell you a little story about you redid Xanadu, and Olivia Newton-John performed it at the 2008 30th anniversary Mardi Gras. So I was there for that performance, and I saw that show. I had such a great night that I got home and I wanted to relive that. So I found that track online, and then, I just had this like moment of like goosebumps. But then I just took notice of your name. I was like, "That's a Steve Anderson DMC remix." Okay. And I had heard your name before, like late 90s, early noughties, but that's when I just sort of took real notice. So when in 2017, I discovered that you were part of, Steps' world, because that's for me when you came into sort of Steps' world, even though I know that you worked with them earlier than that. I was like, okay, here we go. Steve's really going to contemporize and lift Steps up to that time and now. And I, as a fan, was fucking so happy. So I was very, very excited. So you also, like, I'm just got a little note here that's not going to mention it because I think I've messaged you before in the past about it. You also did Nat Bass in 2009 for her super sensual Blondie Heart of Glass mix-up, which is a favourite track of Scott and I's. So for me here to chat to you today, I'm very excited. So anyway, fan moment done.
No, but thank you for that. And thank you for telling me that story, because the Olivia thing was such a, just to talk about that for a second. I mean, I did used to work for a company called DMC, and the very, very last remix I did before I left as my farewell present to them was Xanadu. And I never in a million years envisaged a world where Olivia would end up performing that version at Mardi Gras. I mean, Olivia was, she's the girl on the poster on my wall when I'm a teenager. I mean, that woman is incredible and much, much missed. So, that song I've always described as my favorite pop song of all time, and just to have the opportunity to do that, and then to see her in that moment, and for you to be there to witness that moment as well is truly, truly special. So thank you for telling me that story. And Basingthwaite's amazing. Basingthwaite's one of the most underrated singers that your country has ever produced.
Oh my God.
You are preaching to the choir here. Yeah? You are preaching to the choir. We agree with you.
I love Nat. I absolutely love Nat. And gosh, what a voice.
Yeah, she's fantastic. She actually performed on the weekend with the Rogue Traders at Big Gay Day. So hopefully they're going to have, like, how people go away for a bit and then they come back, and hopefully they're about to have like a little part 2 to their story, I reckon.
Definitely.
Xanadu like it's on my phone. It's on my phone, and it gets a heavy rotation still. That version, because when I
Oh,
See that?
I love it. Oh my god, I love it.
So
I love it.
I'm just showing them my screensaver,
Wow.
which is Kira. Carry on.
That song gives me like I just not to bang on about it because we've got to talk about other stuff, but after reliving that moment, I just like when I got home that day, like that from that party, I was listening to that song and I heard that the way you extended the intro kick in and it gave me goosebumps and it still does. And I remember like maybe I was just because I went to the party and I was coming down, who the hell knows, I was like crying the next day after it. It was just a fun time. So we've talked about enough about it, but thank you.
We have. I will just say that all those little clips on the DMC thing, all the clips from the film, they're all meaningful. Every single part of them has a little meaning, and it ends off with her saying "I love you." So it couldn't be more personal.
It's absolutely wonderful.
Anyway, we miss you, Olivia. We
do.
We really miss
RIP.
you, Olivia.
And for Stephen, I need to fanboy for a moment because for me, you came into my sphere, and I have to tell you that one of my favorite, not only favorite Kylie songs of all time, but actually one of my favorite songs of all time is "Dangerous Game" from the Kylie Minogue album, and that song is I actually bizarrely first heard it on an episode of Home and Away. It was used in a funeral scene. It was,
yeah.
yeah.
I remember, yeah.
And the way that it was shot, I was a big Home and Away fan back then. And the way that it was shot was beautiful. And that the whole track was played over that scene. And that's when that song came into my world. And I pretty much listened to that song weekly and have done for what, 20, 25, 26 years. I think there's just something about that. It's beautiful, but it's anthemic. It's heartbreaking, but it's also uplifting. You seem to kind of capture every emotion possible in that song, and it's such an underrated Kylie song, and it's just one of my personal favorite songs of all time. So the fact that you wrote it is incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, Dave and I think it's quite documented now that when we first started working with Kylie, we just wanted to show off. We wanted to show off in front of her and show that we could do everything, and that was us trying to show off that we could do a Bond theme.
Yes,
that makes
would have
sense.
been amazing.
But sort of a Bond theme that lives a little bit in Massive Attack world.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, nice.
That's what we did. But thank you for that. I adore that song, and it was arguably it was so over the top for what that record was. But Deconstruction were so brilliant and supported us and supported Kylie 100% on the vision, and we were very lucky with that.
This is really just three fans talking about how much we love pop, isn't it? This episode.
Yeah.
Happy to do
it. Before we get into some general questions about Euphoria, I just want to touch a little bit more on Steps. I know that you co-wrote "Stop Me From Loving You" with H and Claire in 2001, and you've touched on Steps before about when you came on board, sort of in this recent era, how there was meetings and all that sort of stuff, and you wanted to contemporize them. But that co-wrote for that song in 2001, was that your first ever meeting with Steps? Is that when you were first introduced to them? Or obviously you were first introduced to them as a fan, but professionally, was that your, when you first came into their world? Or
Yeah, it absolutely was. I mean, as a fan, I will absolutely say I was not on board from 5, 6, 7, 8. I saw that for what it was, but obviously once I knew Pete was involved, and I'm just a huge Stock Aitken and Mortimer fan, I knew Pete was going to always delivers incredible things, and then obviously from One for Sorrow, and that had me, so and then I was in for the whole thing, and just loved everything about it. The Stop Me From Loving You thing was, initially it was Claire and H that came to a studio I was at just to do a day to see what we could do, and that's the very first time that I met Claire, on a very, very hot summer's day, actually, I remember, which was lovely. I think they were exhausted. They were always exhausted, those bands, because they worked so hard. But yeah, that's the first time I met them, and then the first time I met the whole band was when we went and recorded that song and got all the vocals. So yeah, that would have been the first time, and it was a very, very quick introduction. But from that point on, I mean, that ended up being, I think, was it the B-side of
Chain Reaction?
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm asking the experts. I never really know. So yeah, which was really lovely, and we got to finish it and do it properly. And I really I've got a lot of time for that song. It's really fun and dramatic and everything. But then, we didn't really see each other. Claire and I stayed in touch, and continually stayed in touch throughout. And then obviously ended up kind of getting back together again, sort of, to work on her solo stuff years later.
Amazing. Just personally, as a fan, what's your favorite Step song that you love to like bop to? Whether it's either one of the old ones or one of the new ones. Can you name a favorite Step song?
Yeah, I can. It's really easy. It's Heartbeat. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, you said one to bop to, possibly not one to bop to, but yeah. I mean, one to bop to. Then I think "Heartbreak in the City" is a really cleverly brilliant song, and I think it's a modern classic.
Agreed. Well, let's go down the route of Euphoria, shall we? Because that's your most recent project with Claire, and you did work on My Wildest Dreams as well. But I guess, let's talk about Euphoria. So, when it came to album 2, CR2, was it a combination of the both of you coming up with the concept, or was the intention for it to always be a covers album, or did Claire approach you, or did you approach her, or how did it come to be, so to speak?
So Claire and I live quite near to each other, and she has a wonderful dog called Mabel, and we quite regularly go on dog walks. There's a lovely little kind of beautiful wood near us, and we see each other quite a lot, and generally kick around ideas for just general chats and stuff. We've stayed incredibly close. I mean, even back to you say about the first record. I mean, there was a point where there was every year on, I think, January the 1st, we would message each other, and it would be a kind of, "Are you ready yet?" "No, I'm not quite ready." "Are you ready yet?" "No, I'm not quite ready." And then eventually she was ready, and that's what started the original sessions for what became Wildest Dreams in the end. With this one, we had a conversation, and she's spoken about this, I know. So we were talking about, well, to be fair, it all started with a thing called karaoke that was done in lockdown. Whereas the creative community, as soon as lockdown happened, number one, a lot of us thought, well, we're used to spending time in rooms on studios on our own anyway, or with people, so that was fine. But then everyone just wanted to do something. So there were a few artists that I kind of worked with and said, "What do you want to do? Name me a song you always wanted to sing." That's how karaoke came about. That was really, really fun. And then about a year ago, I guess, probably more than that, we started playing around with the idea of, well, what would that sound like if we made proper versions of some of those songs? Going more towards the kind of disco end of things, possibly. And then, as with everything, it always, the gem of an idea comes from creatives, but actually the creation, how to make that into a plausible thing needs amazing management, which is where Fascination came in and encouraged it. And then there began a conversation about a few things. And one day on, I think, one of the walks, we were talking about, Claire's a brilliant cook. I'm sure you probably know that. She's incredible in the kitchen, and she's got makes amazing things. And we just had this kind of weird conversation about the recipe of her voice, and it'd be like, well, it's part Whitney, it's part Olivia, it's part, and also secondarily we had another conversation about the fact that she never had singing lessons, but in a way she did, because these incredible women taught her how to sing and find her voice, because she didn't start sounding like that. And then it was like one of those little moments where you just go, oh, I wonder if that's where to go.
That's the thread.
And that's the thread of like paying homage to these incredible women who taught you how to sing, starting with Karen Carpenter all the way through, to someone, more sort of more modern like Loreen and various people like that. So yeah, that's what it started off as, and then began a process. Again, we lived very close. In lockdown, we set up a studio in our house. So we just started this process of trying lots of songs, like way more. I mean, if anyone ever wants to look at doing one of these records, you need to be prepared to put in the work, because to get however many tracks ended up on the album 13, 14, you need to go through about 100.
Wow.
And to get to that 100, you need to go through about 2,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to get.
Wow.
And there would be songs that, and again, I've heard Claire talk about this. There'd be songs where we'd go, "Oh my God, this is going to be amazing," and within 10 seconds, we look at each other and just go, "No,
Didn't work.
it just didn't work. It didn't have the magic. It didn't have the thing. She didn't." And there were some that just felt like, and there were some that we thought, "Oh, that might be okay." And the moment she started singing it, it was, "Oh my God, this is incredible." Like the Kim Wilde song, "Never Trust a Stranger."
We have that as a
would
point
be,
to talk about.
well, we'll get onto it, but that's a really good example of one that we thought, it's one of Peace of Lorraine at Fascination, it's probably one of his favourite songs of all time. And I adore Kim, and I've worked with Kim and Ricky before. And that when she started singing, we were like, yep, like immediately goosebumps within the first 5 seconds. So if it made her and I feel like that, we knew we could put a tick by the box, and anything that didn't just got thrown away.
Thrown in the bin. What were the songs that kind of started to like kick off the process?
Initially, well, I think No More Tears was always going to be in there because it's her big song. She'd done it on Masked Singer, and I think we just knew. I think with these albums, I mean, it's a weird kind of chemistry that has to go into them, and I've done albums, of covers with few people, more recently with like Luke Evans and Marisha Wallace and stuff, and to find the DNA of it is really, really hard. But you need to kick off with a few really, really strong ones. And I think, we knew No More Tears we had. I think So Emotional was one of the first ones that we really kind of, because actually we weren't going to do that Whitney song. We were going to do another Whitney song.
Yeah, was it going to be, she mentioned that, was it Love Will Save the Day?
Yeah, so I love Love Will Save the Day, and we both do. And then we realized that it was an amazing song, but it kind of didn't have, the chorus doesn't soar, it kind of stays down, which is brilliant. And, anyone asks me about Whitney Houston, that's my favorite female singer of all time. So I love Whitney Houston. And then she just said, "Oh, how about So Emotional?" And I think that's the thing. In some respects, we didn't want to do, well, again, she's perfectly explained this on another interview, that you don't want to do the untouchable. You can't do I Want to Dance with Somebody.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, but if you find that song that it's just still really well known, but people have maybe not heard as much, and then the moment that she hit, it's got to the bridge of So Emotional, we were like, yeah, wow, okay, this is it. And then when we were routining them, it's very much routining them with just a rough kind of you don't spend all the time making it, and if it's not going to work, so it's a very rough piano and drums thing. And then I knew in my head somehow that I knew a way of taking that song and contemporizing it, but keeping the elements that give people nostalgia. So yeah, they were probably the first ones that we started with.
It's really interesting that you mentioned So Emotional, because that is one of my personal favorites on the album. Like I love a bop, so anything sort of high energy, I love listening to it when I'm cooking. It's good to move around to
that's
the
good.
kitchen.
I like that.
Claire. Yeah, I'll tell Claire. And
no, she will love that fact.
Yeah,
she will love that fact.
But so it's so interesting. There's something that we always talk about on the podcast with Steps. When Steps do a cover, Shane likes to say they stepsify it. So if you think about like Chain Reaction or Tragedy, Something in Your Eyes, Better the Devil, they're covers, but at the same time, there's something about the magic of their vocals and the production that they become their own identity. And I think it's a testament to you on this whole album that's what that gives me, but specifically for So Emotional, because you just said the original So Emotional is it's not as disco, it's a little bit more maybe 80s rock glam, or it's just a little harder.
It is exactly that. Yeah.
And so how do you kind of go, I need to take this song that's like an 80s rock glam track and I'm going to turn it into a disco and clarify it? How do you actually decide on how that's going to sound?
Well, I mean, firstly, and again, this goes across the whole album, I really don't know anyone else, any other female singer that I know that would be able to do the vocals on this record, and do Whitney, Celine, Barbara. You know, I mean, I've said this a million times before, but I mean, you know, she really is a world-class singer. I don't really know anyone that can do what she can do. And apart from the fact that, you know, she's my friend, she astonishes and amazes me every single day with what she can do. So that's helpful. Secondly, my process has always been the same, and it's hard to quite quantify it, but I always go back to a quote from Quincy Jones, who said you have to hear the song in your head, the finished thing, and then figure out how to make it. So the moment she started singing So Emotional to a very rough piano vocal, you know, I already had started to hear the record in my head, and by the time we finished, I knew how it should sound, and then you just go and make it. So it's the same process of if I'm, you know, sometimes I'll do really, really, you know, complete reinventions, as in throw everything out and start from scratch. I've done that a lot. But I think with So Emotional, it just needed a really nice update. And, you know, and I think in that, like, there's sometimes you want to have some of the synths and you want to have that stuff. You still want it to have that feeling, but for people, you know, for younger people, you know, Whitney Houston, it's a long time ago. So you want them to listen to the song and it feel at least modern and contemporary, and that it's not an old song. So that's how we kind of went about it, and then just got her to do the most insane vocals, and then decided to put a gospel choir on it. Because more is more, right?
Yeah. And how come I was listening to the original today? There's a bit of at the beginning of the original, Whitney does like a bit of a talky bit. Any reason why that wasn't in the Claire version?
It felt wrong to do that. It felt wrong. Claire's not wild about doing talky stuff anyway, but I just felt that was a very Whitney thing to do, and it just felt a bit cheesy to do it. I don't know. It just felt a bit karaoke to do that. And we were just trying to pay respect to these incredible singers and songs, but put put the mark on it, basically. So yeah, it isn't. Yeah, yes, precisely. Clarify. She will enjoy that as well.
Different from clarify. Clarify.
Different from clarify. And of course, and you know, the interesting thing about what you were talking about as food is that, you know, the sessions that we did were sort of, you know, dog walk, vocal warm up, studio setup, lunch.
Yeah, chorizo, eggy beans, apparently.
How do you know about eggy beans?
So that was one of my dot points I was going to ask you. I was listening. Claire was on the Good Food podcast the other day, and I listened to it last week, and she talked about your routine of recording the album, and she mentioned specifically the chorizo eggy bean dish, and I just wanted to ask you about what that tasted like.
Wow. Oh my God, it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. We were so lucky. And then we would kind of, we'd have, you know, a lovely lunch, and then go back and do the second session for vocals, and then, you know, kind of stop. You know, it was like one of the most joyous recording processes, you know, of my life, because we just lived so close and we just had fun. And I hope that comes across on the record, that you can tell that she's actually quite relaxed and just really, really enjoying singing. And that's what I wanted. I wanted the process to be enjoyable for her, because I knew that would be the best way of getting the best out of her.
That does come across on the record. I was just going to say, Scott and I are massive ABBA fans, and so we've done Summer Night City, and it was a firm favourite for both of us. Just as a side note, have you seen ABBA Voyage? Have you seen it or no?
I have seen it more than once.
Me too. That merge from Lay All Your Love to Me into Summer Night City is just like next level. Anyway, that's not the question I want to ask.
But can we just put it out there that, and it's really, really hard because obviously this is going all around the world, but if anyone finds themselves in London, please go and see ABBA Voyage, because it is genuinely the most magical thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah,
agreed. I had to go back because the first time I saw it, I spent the first 20 minutes crying. So I needed to figure out what happened.
Steve, you and I are cut from the same cloth. I did exactly the same thing. I spent the first 20 minutes crying. The fact that they opened with the song that they opened with, I don't want to spoil it for people, but I never thought I would ever see that song live. And for me, it just gave me goosebumps, and I was like a blubbering mess afterwards. So I had to go back and see it when I was in London this time around, because I was like, do I remember what happened last time? I need to see it again. So
yeah, we're not sidebar to Voyage, because I do it a few times and then an hour's gone by. But
Exactly.
yes, I was so happy that the transition was there, and that transition is amazing. And Summer Night City is my favourite ABBA song. It's always been my favourite ABBA song.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to cover it, but I've wanted to wait for a really special time to do so. And this was it.
The question I was going to ask was there any other ABBA songs in mind, but I think you've just answered it. It's your favourite ABBA song and you're waiting for the right time.
I mean, we did Voulez-Vous with Steps.
Oh my
Yeah,
God. Yes.
So Voulez-Vous in general is my favourite ABBA album. So I mean, yes, there's many ABBA songs that I could possibly get involved with. But
Voulez-Vous with Steps. Sorry, when did this happen? Am I missing a
it
moment?
was for an it was for a
Interlude.
tour. It was an video interlude for a summer tour, the summer of one of the summer.
That's
Steps
right. It
tours
was
a few years
too.
ago.
Yes. Sorry.
It came before, so it was with that. So we recorded it.
Yep.
And it was done. It was shown on the video for a quick change.
Yep. That makes
So they
sense.
never performed it.
Yep.
So
Yes.
you're
So,
saying
yeah,
what you're
that's-
saying, Steve, is there a recording of that somewhere? Is there a studio version
Yeah,
somewhere?
probably.
Oh.
Probably.
We'll take that offline. Hey, Scott, maybe you should talk about what you're dying to talk about, and that's No More
Well,
Tears with Delta.
before I just want to
yeah.
talk on. Well, I wanted to touch on Summer Night City just another moment because, and where did the Andy Bell duet? I've read that Andy Bell approached you, like Claire, to do a duet. Was Summer Night City his idea, or was it he approached you to do a duet and you had already recorded Summer Night City and that was what you had in mind?
So Claire and Andy knew each other already because they'd done a TV show together of quite a few years back called Pop Star to Opera Star. Coincidentally, one of my oldest and closest friends is a guy called Ian Masterson, who obviously is Danny's MD, also the MD, musical producer on Strictly. But he and I worked together a lot, but very rarely on records. And actually, weirdly, one of the last times that we worked together was we did a duet with Danny and Kylie on The Winner Takes It All for a show that he was doing called Beautiful People. So he was producing some songs for Andy Bell. And we were looking for a male, sort of a potential male singer. So it all kind of was bubbling around at the same time. It just became quite obvious that would be a really good choice. They had history. It was in his range. It just kind of felt really organic. And duets on albums like these are really tricky. You can't just go for the first person. It has to work for both artists. It has to be, so as far as the song choice is concerned, I think it was kind of a mutual thing. But I just remember that they had a connection, and Ian and I obviously are so close. So it just and they were both working at the same time, so it just made perfect sense to do it. And there was as a definitive male female split on the song as well.
Yeah. And I just love, again, you were saying it's your favorite song. It's one of Shane and I's, and it's an underrated, amazing
underrated.
ABBA song. So it's just good that it's having a little bit, you're giving it a moment again, because it definitely deserves that.
It was hard to, I love the sound of the original. It's so punchy but again, I was super keen on any of these records that I make where I'm doing, covers of other things. You never want it to be sort of a karaoke kind of version. There's no point. It needs a reinvention. Again, the original's, probably 40 years old now. So it has to sound for a new audience like it's a new record. But I wanted to keep, obviously, there's sort of the guitars are in there, the string, everything's in there, but it's all kind of mashed up and glued together with beats and stuff. So, but yeah, it was fun. So, and it was lovely to work with Ian again, because, we do so much together. But it's fun when we get together apparently we only get together for ABBA duets. That seems to be the rule.
And also he did the Trouser Enthusiast mix of Summer Night City is insane.
It's fantastic.
I can't even begin to tell you how I played that we were in a rehearsal with Claire and her BVs for a show, and he sent it to me, and I just played it in the room, and we just lost it. It's, you know, the bit when it just goes up to the build and build and build, and then it hits her ad lib of Summer Night City and kicks back in again.
Yep.
Oh my God. So Trouser Enthusiasts and Brothers in Rhythm were around at the same time. So we were consistently always trying to outdo each other. But boy, that, and you know, my favorite thing he ever did around that, well, in his first thing was the remix he did of Disremembrance with Danny, which I think is
so
incredible. But this challenges that for his best ever work. So gosh, I'm with you. What a remix, right?
I would absolutely agree with you on that. And can I just say on Brothers in Rhythm, such a good feeling. I listen to that. That's on my gym playlist. It's a great song for the gym.
Oh, that's good to know.
Steve, I think we need to talk for the next 5 hours now just about the Delta and Claire duet, because I mean, obviously Shane and we're Australian. Delta, to me, she is my favorite female singer of all time. I adore her. I've been to every single concert she's ever been to. Shane and I went twice to see her last week in Melbourne.
I'm so, by the way, I'm just going to be jealous for a minute. I'm just going to say, I mean, you got to see Innocent Eyes. I spoke to her about it when she was here. It sounds amazing. All the clips I've seen look amazing.
It was amazing.
So yeah, I'm sure it was incredible, and I'm incredibly jealous of you both.
To see, I mean, it's something more artists need to do to play an album from beginning to end, and I think pretty much in every song was in its original form. She didn't, you know how obviously over the years things change, as you know, you mix it up. She really went back to basics for pretty much all of it. And it was just incredible for an album that, you know, here in Australia, I think it's like 1 in 15 people own it.
I thought it was 1 in 7, wasn't it?
1 in 7 or something. So, you know, it's an incredible, you know, it's a history making album here to be able to kind of see the performer do that from start to finish. More artists need to do things like that, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So yes, Delta, when this was announced, I think I squealed or I screamed or I dropped my coffee. I was so excited because obviously we've had a Delta crossover with Steps before, because Steps recorded Dancing with a Broken Heart in 2017. But I'm just interested to know from start to finish, how did this duet come about?
So it was just a small tiny bit of history for people. Delta and I first worked together in, I think, around 2014 when I worked with her on a Mardi Gras headline performance.
And you were the only man that could think Predictable and Hung Up by Madonna would go well together. That mix is insane. I remember that.
Well, it was the whole thing was a collaboration between the two of us, and we, you know, it was incredible creative process. I adore working with her. She's such an incredible musician, obviously, as you say, one of the best singers in the world. So we had that. So that was how we kind of started working together. And again, I was a fan. I have that album. I have all those albums. I have every single Delta record. So it was really, really fun to kind of bringing her into that world, because she hadn't done as much of that. And then we carried on doing bits and pieces over the years from various other things, some other Mardi Gras things, some club stuff, some, you know, we just stayed in touch. And, you know, I adore her. And, you know, she's got that sort of angelic quality to her, but that voice as well is, oh my God. And the honest answer is, when we were in Claire's kitchen with Claire and I and Adam and Peter from Fascination, we brought up No More Tears, and it was like, oh gosh, who's going to do the duet? And I think I just said, well, I can ask Delta, and they were like, really? And I was like, well, yeah. And it was like, yeah, but she's not going to say yes. I was like, she might. And it was just, and Claire's such a huge Delta fan, so she was like, okay, well, I'm not even going to allow myself to think about it, because it's just not going to happen. And pretty much that's how it happened. I asked Delta, and Delta said yes. And then I was able to phone Claire and tell her, which, you know,
what was her reaction?
That was quite a high pitched sort of shriek, and a bit of crying and stop it. No, really. So she was like super excited. But then it was about making that happen, because obviously Delta was in Australia, and it was it was a bit touch and go for a while because just trying to get the deadlines to work, and Delta had a few bits and pieces going on, so we cut it very close. But I always was saying, you know, I was like, it will happen. Don't worry. I trust Delta. Like Delta delivers. Like Delta has been through everything. There is no way this girl does not do this. It will happen. She's just magical. And sure as it was, I think probably the day before the mastering deadline was the day that we got the vocal, and I mixed it straight away and sent it to mastering.
Did you, like, up until all hours of the morning, just like got to get this mix done?
Not until all hours in the morning, because the joy of the time difference means that it kind of was. She would probably recorded it to all hours in the morning by the time it got to me, and I'd already done everything else, and I'd held this special place for her, but yeah, I mean, gosh, I mean, the voices blended so perfectly. The vocal was spectacular, everything I could have dreamed of. I'd done it before with her when we did a duet with Kylie and Delta for When You Wish Upon a Star for her Christmas show as well. So I knew that any vocal I was going to get sent was going to be amazing. So yeah, that's how it came about. And then cut to, you know, a little bit later when the two girls kind of got to meet each other in the studio in London and do
that
the
was
video.
camp. That was camp and fun
think?
to watch. Yeah, look, I was just, you know, as fans who, you know, we know Delta from growing up with her, and you know, Scott and I have grown up with Steps. Just to see them on camera together and then singing a song, it's just like,
it
what
was
is happening
such
here?
a fun day,
Yeah.
and there was so much. Yeah, it was so many laughs, so much mutual respect, you know, and yeah, it's extraordinary, and just the way that the voices blend as well, and the respect between the two of them as singers. And it's hard, you know, it's hard to take on such a revered song with the two original performers who are, you know, Barbra Streisand and Donna Summer, you know, incredible. So it's a tough one, but I think again they both brought their own thing to it. And yeah, and then the other thing with No More Tears, which is really kind of much less interesting unless you're a musician, is that I decided that I wasn't going to do I wasn't going to use the original bass line. I wasn't going to use the original string line. All that. I felt like it needed. I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm Donna and Barbara, my favorite. But I just felt like it could be bigger, which is such a weird thing to say, because the string arrangement on the original is there's not many strings in the chorus. So I thought, right, I'm just going to rewrite the string arrangement, change the bass line, and again, try and bring it into a more contemporary sounding world so it doesn't sound like every other version of that song. And thank God that worked out and people liked it. So we're really happy with the reaction.
Oh, well, it's amazing. And I love your 12-inch mix of it. That just added intro, that slow bassline intro that builds it up. I love it so much. That's actually probably my go-to version that I listen to.
Well, I think I come from, you know, my upbringing, you know, from my early 20s is dance music. And I, you know, come from, I think it's important even these days. I think it's important to give DJs something that they can play. And they were never going to play, you know, I love the intro to No More Tears. It's beautiful, but it's going to kill a dance floor dead.
Yeah.
So
for the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, precisely. And it's kind of like when I did the extended of 100 Degrees, it's the same thing. That intro is beautiful, but from a dance floor, you need a big build mixable intro. So I always, if I get a chance to do those extendeds, I do them because I've always got I always have a little bit of my heart belongs to the dance floor and the DJs and making sure they're happy.
I was just going to touch on that point, actually. You did that with Tragedy, and that's reignited Scott and I's, and probably Brad's as well, love for that song more. Not that we didn't like it, but the fact that you extend, like that Party on the Dance Floor version, and it's now the Steps 25 version, you've extended that intro out. I don't listen to the standard radio album track version anymore. I only listen to that one because I love that. Like, I grew up on dance music as well in my early 20s and my late teens and stuff. And so I love a long extended intro. So thank you.
Well, Tragedy was, I mean, gosh, to get the first time that I got my hands on these things. I mean, if you have to remember, like, you know, even at the beginning of Steps, and the first time I heard Tony Moran's mix of One for Sorrow, and I love Tony.
Yeah.
Tony's one of those guys who when we were growing up doing our thing, there was, Tony Morales, Clibbers and Cole. These were our contemporaries, but we were all doing stuff at the same time. So, and I remember going, gosh, I'd love to get my hands on that. And the same with Tragedy. I was like, oh, I'd love to do it. And I never did. I'd never done a Steps remix until I took over as live. So it was so much fun. But of course, the hilarious thing about Tragedy is that, for anyone that hasn't seen the show, there's a massive wedding march at the beginning of it, and which makes probably no sense until you've seen the show.
Yeah.
But then once you transition out of that, I love it. I'm from Dance Week. You can't build a teasing build up.
It's so funny that you say that about the wedding march. A mate of mine, this is like 6 months ago, I said he was like putting some stuff on Instagram and he put some pop songs, and I said, listen to this one, this is Steps, and I sent him the 25 mix. And within the first like 30 seconds, was like, it's a wedding song? Like, what's happening? I was like, no, give it a moment. And then like 30 seconds later from that, he's like, oh, I see what you mean now.
Yeah.
And then
I sent him the clip. Song.
Yeah, it is. I sent him the clip from the concert as well, and he was like, oh, this makes so much more sense. And then by the end of it, he was like, hey, that was really good. And I was like, that's why I sent it to you, mate. Like, honestly.
Well, we thought about lopping that intro off for the 25 version, but everyone seemed to wanted that version. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So
yeah. That's what makes it, I think.
And I think the other thing with Tragedy, that version of Tragedy, is already Tragedy. The original version is brilliant, and it's so over the top, and it's so different to the Bee Gees original. I mean, for many people, Tragedy is a Steps song, not a Bee Gees song, which, it's to do with, generations and stuff. But then it was like, well, what else can I do? And I was like, well, I know, I can just bung a full orchestra on it and horns and strings and just go nuts. Just be the biggest version of Tragedy there ever was.
It was so good.
And, so yeah, thanks. That was a fun one.
With just one more thing on No More Tears, was there a plan B if Delta couldn't get? Because I know at this time, this was when Delta was voice rest from my memory around this time. So if she couldn't do it, was there a plan B? Was there other people you had in mind?
I wouldn't accept one. I knew she was going to do it.
Love that.
I genuinely did. I don't think any of us were. It came very close, but I believe fully in Delta Goodrem.
Yeah.
And I know that she will deliver.
Yeah.
And she always delivers, and she did.
And she did. Amazing. Good answer. It was either that it would just, or there just wouldn't be No More Tears on the album. That would have been the alternative.
She was always going to do it.
Yeah.
I trust her implicitly.
Yeah. One of the other things Claire mentioned, I think in a retro pop interview, was we talked about Love Will Save the Day, but she also mentioned that she recorded Open Your Heart by Madonna, Leave a Light On by Belinda Carlisle, and Love's About to Change My Heart by Donna Summer. Were those really, it was just like, we need to cull this down? Like, were they not good enough, or it was just, we've got too many, we got to cut?
I think the original songs are incredible. I mean, Open Your Heart is one of my favorite Madonna songs. It just, I think it was one of those ones that we started, and I just think we didn't think we could bring the same magic to on that one. And I think Donna, we'd already got, obviously No More Tears was Donna, and we tried This Time I Know It's For Real. And Love and the other one, and Love's About to Change. I mean, Love's About to Change, I love that song. Oh my god, it's an amazing song. But this time it was between the two, and I think we recorded both. And there was a point where This Time was on the cusp. More to do with me, actually. The first incarnation of This Time I Know It's For Real, I don't know, it wasn't great. I wasn't happy with it, and I couldn't. It was the one I struggled with the most. It's Stock Aitken and Waterman, of course. So you don't. The temptation is just to do a version like they would, only updated, but I'd rather, then people just listen to the original. And then that was one that I didn't have the whole vision of how it was going to end up. And it was getting quite close to the bone of doing it. And then it was a eureka moment one day when I was out. And most of the times with a lot of creatives, we tend to have ideas when we're not in the place where we can exact them. So it's normally when you're away from the studio and you're doing something else, all of a sudden the pop in your head. And and then I realized or worked out, This Time I Know It's Real, why don't we take that song back to kind of Donna Summer 70s disco, sort of reverse it, basically reverse engineer it, but then drums wise and bass wise keep it in a contemporary kind of Dua-esque disco world.
Yeah.
So that came around. So yeah, that was it. But anything that we tried, it was never down. The songs are always amazing, and also, you know, to pay homage to Madonna would have been wonderful. She was a huge inspiration on Claire and massive inspiration on me. But we just knew it was a weird thing. We would just look at each other and just go close, but
Not
no
quite.
We needed the magic. You
Yeah.
needed to feel the magic, and on every song on Euphoria, we felt it. We just knew. Whether anyone else was going to agree, we had no idea, but we just knew between us and the management that it had something special, and we could bring it. Never felt like it was doing it for the sake of it or doing it because we should.
You should. You just on this time, I know it's real. I'm just curious. Have you actually ever heard the Young Divas version, which were they're an
Yes.
Australian pop group? Yeah.
Yes.
Just
Yeah, which I thought was a really good version, but again, that was very much taking it into a more a more sort of modern dance world.
yes.
So I didn't want to do that, and there's other versions that have been really, really sped up and are kind of ravey and stuff. So
Yeah.
I just thought, you know, you can't Stockhead and Mortimer write the most incredible pop songs. So you can never really go wrong with them. But again, I was always keen to try and do something different to what had been done before. And that's why it worked out. But I mean, arguably we could have done 7 Donna Summer songs. You know, you could have done a whole album of Donna Summer if you wanted to, because she's got
That's the next album.
She's so perfect
CR3.
for this stuff.
Yeah, 3.
She's so perfect for this stuff. But that's why those others didn't go on.
I have a little point here to go back and circle back to it because we've already touched on it, and it's about Never Trust a Stranger.
Ooh, yes.
That song, look, I heard that song as a kid. My mum's a massive 80s and King Wild fan, and like a lot of songs from the 80s, like I heard them all when I was young. But I had not heard it for a very long time. And then I'm playing the album and it comes on and I'm like, what the hell? And then next thing you know, I'm just like, I listen to it daily still. That was, from what you've just said, I think that's one of those songs that when Claire started recording it, it was just that magic moment. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal.
Immediately, because just prior to that, interestingly, I have a show, a show that I work on called 80s Classical, which is bringing original 80s artists together with a full symphony orchestra. And last year, Kim Wilde was one of the artists. Kim was there, Belinda Carlisle was there, and Claire was watching the show. So we did Never Trust a Stranger. And so it was kind of in the area, but also, as I said before, Peter Lorraine from Fascination, it's just one of his favourite songs, in the way that like Slightest Touch is one of his favourite songs. You know, he has this thing. So, and Kim again was a really big influence on Claire as far as being an incredible pop star. I mean, you know, that sort of UK Madonna almost sort of thing. Kim and Ricky are kind of really good friends of mine. Ricky's her brother is also the most amazing producer. Produced Kids in America, wrote it, still writes and produces to this day. So yeah, that was one which we just tried, and I was keen to not. I didn't want to do what I'd done with Kim with it, which was like orchestrate it and synth, because that was her version, and I think in the future that version will end up coming out with the orchestra. So I thought it was the one time that I felt that we could go quite synthwave with it, and you know, go
Action.
very thank you. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It was just to get really analog synths, but actually in a world where it didn't sound, it had 80s, but it was kind of modern 80s.
Yeah.
In the way that something like Ava Max is modern 80s,
Yeah.
or, you know, there's so many other people that are doing this brilliantly, I mean, including Kylie, perfectly on, there's 3 tracks on Tension that do that job. So, the moment that within 5 seconds, I just was smiling from ear to ear, just listening to her sing it. And I just said, this is it, this is on. And interestingly, for people, sort of younger people who've never heard that song before, it became their instant favorite from the album because it felt like a new song.
And like I had heard that song before, but when I was really little. So for me, it's almost like I had this moment. I was like, I know this song, but then instantly it's my favorite. So yeah, I had that magic moment, same as you when you and Claire were smiling at each other. I was like, oh, this is instantly being
Oh,
played 700 times a
yeah.
day for me. So
You know, the brilliance of Ricky Wilde's songwriting, and you know the Wilde family in general, is the fact that you can take a song from that long ago and put it out now, and it still sounds fresh.
I had the
So
pleasure of seeing Kim Wilde at Mighty Hoopla last year, the Hoopla that
oh,
Steps performed at, and
yes.
my goodness, I had never seen Kim Wilde before, and I was like, what did I just witness? She went off. Me and my friend, we
Well,
were just like, what the hell? It was so good.
plus you were in a very overcrowded, sweaty tent.
That too. That that too
Uh,
adds to the atmosphere.
I was there, by the way. I was
Were you?
there. And, yeah, yeah.
Of
Well,
course you
yeah,
were.
absolutely. Yeah,
Were
I
you
was
in the
there because
crowd
I
with
was
us,
there.
or were you standing off sides of
Well,
the stage?
I was kind of so I was there with Louise Redknapp. So Louise was played the same day. But yeah, I watched yeah, I saw that set
Fuck,
with
it
Kim
was
as
good.
well. It was like it was a weird. They took it away this year, but this is really boring. But I'm just going to talk about the fact that tent had a weird roof, and it was just really resonant, and it was like being. I would imagine, I've never been, but it was almost like being at Wembley Stadium for a World Cup match. It was
Yeah.
just the crowds were unbelievable in that thing,
They were, yeah.
and Kim was, yeah. I mean, Kim Wilde is, yeah, just live is extraordinary.
So like I went into that going because my friend's like, oh, let's go see Kim Wilde. So we went into there and I walked out of it and I was like, have I just seen one of the best acts, a side act that's not even a headliner? I think I have. It was
Yeah,
great.
you have.
So yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, I'll send you. There's a link on YouTube which people can find of Kim doing Kids in America at 80s Classical with the full symphony
Oh
orchestra.
yeah, send it to
Wow.
us. That'd be great.
That's
I'd love to watch.
that's what a rock star looks like.
Oh, fantastic. Um, we have some notes here to talk about some other songs, of course, obviously.
Sure.
Euphoria, the title
Uh-huh.
track. How did that one sort of like Claire sort of mentioned it a few times, but how did that one sort of come about? And was when you recorded it, you were like, oh, that actually has to be the title. Like, that's the title track. We need that to be the title. Or was the whole Eurovision thing like, we want Claire to do something with Eurovision? Then she's like, let's record it and go from there.
So we didn't have Euphoria until the very end. So the last two things that went on the album were Euphoria and No More Tears after I got Delta's vocal. There was a WhatsApp group trying to think of album titles for months. And Claire's, I know, I've heard Claire say this as well. And when you're trying to find a title for a cover, it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Like everything is just rubbish, you know. But you go down these roads and say, well, I'll say this rubbish thing and it might be anyway. I wouldn't even say hundreds, I'd say thousands of names. I'd be like, yeah, oh, it's not, okay, yeah, oh, no, is that good? Like weird, like, oh god, we just didn't know what to call the record. And Claire always said it's infuriating, but something will happen. And what actually happened was, as you said, she was asked to perform a headline at the pre-Eurovision party in Liverpool, and I think management said, "Oh, you should do a Eurovision song." She said, "Well, if I'm doing one, I should do Euphoria." And then it was literally as simple as, "Oh, that's quite a good album title. Maybe we should do that." And then management said, "Oh God, we should have recorded it, you know, but we go to mastering in like whatever 3 days." And then I went, "Yeah, we can do that." So
I love this.
we did. So yeah, so literally it was, I kind of got back, worked on it, went to hers, finished. We got it all done and dusted in 3 days. So that's the
Wow.
last two things I did was we did the Euphoria version and I finished the mix on No More Tears for mastering. And we had an album title which we were searching for, and it came from because it was everything. The album is euphoric,
Yeah.
and we'd gone down all these other roads of trying to explain what it was about. And it was like one word. It has to be one word. It's like, well, there it is.
Because I read somewhere that I think was it maybe Adam for a while wanted it to be called "Songs for Lonely" or "Songs for the Lonely." I'd
That was
read
one of the
somewhere that he-
suggestions.
Interesting.
That was
album
one of the
title.
suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was that. Oh my gosh, there was so I can't even remember so many. But you just get to that point. It's really genuinely hard when you're trying to explain a concept for a record in one, in one title, and it not sound like, it not sound naff. Really, in all honesty.
I remember Steps saying all this in the various different promo interviews they had for What the Future Holds Part 2, that they were spending so much time to try and work out probably
Yeah.
thousands of suggestions in that WhatsApp group that they have with all 5 and 25 of them or whatever. And they were spending so much time to find the album name for that album that they decided on What the Future Holds Part 2 because they couldn't get to a point of what else to call it.
Hey, it worked.
So I get, and it did. It
works.
actually works.
And with Euphoria as well, Claire's voice, again, it was almost like that song was made for her because it was written by the same people who wrote Something in Your Eyes. So I think there's something to do with those songwriters as well. But her voice was just made for that song.
Well, I think the resonance within Loreen and the resonance within Claire is kind of probably similar, and the range is quite similar. I mean, Loreen is one of the most spectacular singers, I've ever heard. And, way beyond the 2 Eurovision songs, that just in general, that, the album, and, she almost, to me, she has that kind of Leona Lewis sort of quality to her voice, which I find incredible. So again, with Euphoria, that was one that was tricky because it was like, well, you don't want to reinvent the wheel totally because so much of it is about the sound. But again, I just thought, well, if I can kind of bring it up to date a little bit, and then just do my regular thing of, there's a gospel choir on it now, there's an orchestra on it now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't there before, which kind of shines a bit more on the orchestral version, so you can hear kind of more of what's underneath all the dance stuff. But yeah, Claire's vocal on it is incredible, and she loves the song. I mean, I'm all about artists and singers connecting with songs. I'm always about believability over technical ability. Luckily, Claire has both. But I want people to feel something. I don't want people to listen to something and go, oh, that sounds technically perfect. It was like, do you feel it? Does it make you feel something? Do you get an emotion from it? And that's exactly what Claire delivered in that vocal on that record, on that song, and throughout the album.
We've touched on Xanadu already, and so Claire's done a version of Xanadu on this album. So you obviously get that same feeling of magic and emotion from, like, was there another Olivia Newton-John song that you were considering for the album as well, outside of Xanadu? Or did you want to do Xanadu because of your love for Olivia and it needed to be done with Claire's vocals?
Well, it was Olivia was also very much on her list of people, that she wanted to be when she was growing up, that if you think about that kind of her growing up in the sort of, I mean, it wouldn't have been Xanadu because, let's be honest, there's not that many people in the world that ever saw Xanadu. There's only a few of us. But I think, because of Greece and also just Olivia's whole career, through physical and everything. But no, Xanadu just felt like the right song, the right feeling for the record, and also a way to explore, certainly in the first verse, and the softer side of Claire's voice before we kind of get big. But the other thing about Xanadu and actually running through this entire album is I had the most incredible team of in the studio working on it, specifically the backing singers, whose job was to sort of deconstruct some of the backing vocal parts. So, I mean, on Xanadu, it's a girl called Bianca Claxton, who I've worked with a lot, and you need all of those answers and all the Jeff Lynne stuff, but it needed to be female, not male. And, like there's so many intricate elements that go into making Xanadu what it is. But no, I didn't. I mean, I could name hundreds of Olivia songs that I'd love to hear, that I'd love to do, but Xanadu was the right one for this project.
Just one of the other songs that I really fell in love with that kind of surprised me because I'd never heard the original was Never Knew Love Like This Before. That's actually one of the vocals on that are beautiful. Just any stories or memories of how that came about?
So Never Knew Love Like This Before was one of the songs that we had done on the karaoke thing. I'm originally from a in a place called Essex in England, and it's known for its kind of soul love of kind of soul music. And so I was aware of that song originally, but it gained a sort of second life around the series Pose, where where Candy, when there's that whole thing where Candy died, and it was her sort of was like a wake song. It was so beautiful, and she lip synced to it. So when we did that, there was a lot of love from that kind of community, which is hugely important to me and always has been. So it just felt like, and actually I think Never Knew Love Like This Before was possibly one of the very first ones that we did before it became Euphoria. So when we were more in a disco world, and it just stayed because it was glorious. And again, backing vocals on that is by a friend of mine, Katie Holmes Smith, who's who works with Adele. And I just wanted that one to have a lot of feel of the original, but again, almost like one of those great sort of DJ French kind of cut up versions of it that felt fresh, still feels really fresh, like it's sampled it, but it's not sampled. We obviously redid it all. So yeah, and I think it was like shows the real soulful part of her voice as well. And also just, we need something as well in there just to get, if this thing ever goes out and tours and stuff, she's like, you need a mid-tempo.
Oh yeah, she needs a break. She needs to sit down.
It's still a big song, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I adore that. It's one of my favorites on the album, and yeah, and again, it still has. I feel it always has now that resonance as much as it does with the original singer. I think it has that resonance with Pose, and acceptance, and all of the things that we all stand for and believe in.
And the other song that I just wanted to touch on was Song for Lonely. It's such an incredible choice for Cher. I think, what was the decision? Okay, that's going to be the Cher song. Because, was Believe ever in the on the list at all? Or was it always going to be that one?
I think Claire's said before, that a bit like the kind of why we didn't do I Want to Dance with Somebody. There's certain songs you just don't touch. Saying that, I just saw a few weeks ago, and Jessie Ware does the most incredible version of Believe, but she totally changes it, and it's brilliant. But no, Song for the Lonely was Adam Klein, who came up with it, and Adam is like a pop genius. I mean, I think I've kind of got that sort of encyclopedic knowledge, but Adam it's freaky what he can remember. And then it was in the kitchen that day, he said, "Oh, what about this?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I kind of remember that song." And I don't know why it hadn't really resonated with me. And then at the moment we listened to it, it was like, oh my God, yeah. And again, it's such a Cher song. It's such a metrophonic, Mark Taylor song, who I love. But it had that very brilliant, specific 2000s sound to it. And I immediately, the moment I listened to Cher's version, I was like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. Like I could hear I know how to update it if it works. And again, it was one of those ones where within the first 5 seconds we were like, yep, that's it. And then it was like, let's just turn this into the banger of all bangers.
And your extended mix, and with the extra vocals towards the end, brilliant.
Ah, yes. Well, that was how we recorded it. And then, and again, with those two incredible girls and my friend Adatone Ayula on BVs. And so we got a chance to feature them a bit more. But yeah, we always got, and then when it got to the album version, it just felt like it was going on a bit too long. It just didn't really work in the context of the album. So we snipped it for that. So it was really nice with all these different editions that we were able to give everyone the full version of it as well.
We haven't touched on I Surrender. I saw I Surrender at the Ultimate Tour back in 2012. It was the very first time I ever got to see Steps live. So I saw it as a ballad version, which it's, I guess, known for. So I love the fact that this version on this album is a bit more disco, like what you were trying to achieve. And it's made me re-love the song again, this version of it, because not that I didn't like it to start with, but you know, when you fall in love with something again you haven't heard for a while, because Claire had done it on the Ultimate Tour before, it was like, oh, we have to do this again because she's done it before, or it was just like another one of those songs where you just sort of whittled it down and got to there.
No, it was absolutely, it was her her song. We'd done it on karaoke. She'd done it on the tour. We were looking, we kind of, once we got to the point where we knew what we were making, we knew that we just wanted everything apart from one song to be up tempo. We felt that, you know, the ballads album and the mid tempo album had sort of been done, so we knew it was that. And then I was always inspired a bit. Again, going back to Tony Moran, Tony did a really amazing remix of My Heart Will Go On, which is still to this day one of my favourite remixes anyone's ever done of anything. So is that taking that thing? And again, I Surrender is, for the sort of, from a boring technical point of view, is one of those ballads that kind of what we call doubles up. So it's at a tempo which means you don't have to change too much. You just kind of, it's kind of half speed, so you just put a 4/4 on it, slightly faster. But yeah, so, and again, that was just about respectfully updating it and making it up tempo but keeping it classy in a sort of modern way, I suppose, to which again Tony did The Heart Will Go On, or say someone like Frankie Knuckles did, you know, Unbreak My Heart.
Yep.
Those classic ballads that became dance records and disco records. And actually I've always thought that a lot of those, the greatest songs, greatest disco songs and dance songs, you know, do sometimes start as ballads and then you just put a beat on them. But the one thing about I Surrender I remember completely is when we recorded it, the vocal pretty much that certainly from when we get to, well, almost all of it, but certainly that sort of chorus to the whole middle eight is the first take.
Wow.
It's the first time. It's the first time she'd sung it since she did it in karaoke.
Wow.
And at the end of it, it was just like muscle memory just came back. And there's hardly anywhere to breathe in I Surrender. So it was one of those ones where she almost did it and collapsed. But I was just like, okay, well, that's done then. I was like, should we do another one? I was like, no.
Perfection.
No. I'm one of those. Yeah, I just, there's no way. It's like, what if it's just, it's like, it's fine. That's it. You're never going, that's brilliant. Of course, she now sings it whenever she goes out live and smashes it all the time. I wasn't worried that she couldn't do it again, but there was a magic in the fact it's the first time. We didn't prep it. We didn't routine it. I said, let's just go straight into record and see what happens. And that's what happened.
Was that the only song that had a first go recording?
Oh, no, there's loads of them.
Yeah,
there's loads of them.
I imagine
because
that.
It's that amazing thing that happens when, you know, someone gets to sing something for the first time. I always love when you write songs, you know, this is why a lot of people go back and keep their demo vocals, you know, because there's a magic in there where you're just like reacting for the first time and you just, something different happens. So, you know, yeah, there's not a lot with Claire Richards, you know, it's not a lot of takes anyway, because it just comes out like that. So she's such a gift as for a producer.
Scott, I think I told you on our last podcast that when I saw her at VIA in Manchester just recently, it was to have the pleasure of seeing her, what you just said, stretch those vocals on I Surrender and just belt out that note in the club. It was like, wow. I was blown away. And like, I've seen Steps quite a few times, and I've seen One for Sorrow when she does that big note at the end, because that's what happens now. It was really, as a fan who's grown up with her, to see this and have her moment, it was wonderful to see.
Amazing. Glad you enjoyed it.
The album ends on Goodbye to Love, which is, for all Steps fans will know that, because Claire is a massive Carpenters fan. Was from the get-go of making this album, was there always, we have to record this song, no matter, even if the rest of the album is quite up-tempo, we have to do this song? Because she just, it's very emotional listening to that. And I actually wonder if it was emotional for her recording that song.
So to answer the question, absolutely, she was adamant that this would be there. It was the first song. Karen Carpenter was the first voice she fell in love with. This was the first song that she ever performed for an audience when she was 8 or 9 years old or something. It was, Karen Carpenter is such a huge figure for her. So it was always, we need to do it, and it should be the last track. And I'm obviously a massive Carpenters fan as well, and a massive Karen fan. So then it was like, which, you know, I think there was a bit of which song do we do, but this one felt right. And yeah, I think it was emotional, because this one we didn't try out because we knew it was going to work. So I did the whole piano string arrangement before we recorded, and I did the same thing. I just said, well, here it is, sing along. And yeah, it was incredibly emotional. I mean, for as many times in the recording of that album that, you know, we were kind of jumping around and whooping, you know, there was a few times, and that's one of them, where it just got very, you know, you're just trying to hold the emotion in so you don't make a noise, because I'm in the same room as her. So, you know, you don't want me sniveling in the background.
Start blubbering in the corner.
Breaking my heart.
God, to be a fly on the wall of this process.
So, yeah. Yeah, I'm always incredibly proud of her. But yeah, that just touched on the side of her voice, which I guess people don't often hear. And again, that's about that believability. You know, you can't sing a song like that unless you've got that sort of, you know, that real strong believability to deliver those lyrics and that melody. And it was a nice excuse, again, always an excuse to put strings on something. You know me.
Yeah. And it's a good, again, in the set list, if she does tour, she can have a sit down.
Totally. Which she loves.
Yeah, exactly.
The album's made it to number 2, and if it wasn't for Vulnerable, it would have been number 1. But why do you think, I think you've kind of maybe already answered this question, but why do you think it's connected with the public so much?
Well, firstly, and one of the reasons that, I mean, I love you guys and I love the pod and I think it's fantastic, but one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you is that just to firstly say thank you to anybody that got any, like, bought it, streamed it, downloaded it, multiple versions, whatever, even Claire's specific artwork versions, which, you
got
know,
one in my drawer.
It's over there.
Oh,
Yeah.
We both got one. Yeah,
she did by hand, and it was, you know, she's meticulous at all that stuff. She really, you know, she's really genuinely cares. So for anybody that had any involvement in it, I would just want to say really thank you, because it kind of it means the world to us and to everybody involved in making it. But, you know, also to me, to see, you know, her, you know, my friend, go and do this incredible thing, and it have this incredible sort of amount of love for it. I mean, honestly, when we were making it, we thought, we hoped, we felt it was right. I think Claire said, it's, you know, you know, you're doing something about, you know, there's something that feels right about it. So we thought it was good. But I think probably, in real honesty, we thought, well, gosh, if it goes top 10, that will be amazing. You know, we never in our wildest dreams would have thought it would go. And for a few days it was sat at number one. And we were like, how has this happened? Like, how has this happened? But I think it's tantamount to, and I mean, officially, you know, she got a official charts number 1 award the other day. It was number 1 sales. It was number 1 everywhere.
It was number 1 in everything. Bloody streaming.
It was number 1 in our hearts. Let's be honest.
Exactly.
But that's fine. The world is the world, and that's totally fine. You know, that's all cool. So, but yeah, I think the main thing is that we didn't know it was going to do as well, and I think she really worked so hard. You know, I mean, probably obviously in the UK more, but so many signings, so many interviews, so many, like, there was so much. She couldn't have done more in the promotion of it. You know, incredible management, Demon, incredible record label, and I think I guess people liked what we liked, and they liked her singing those songs, and I think it wasn't too left of center, but it also wasn't just a covers album for the sake of a covers album. You know, people appreciated it was coming from her heart, and her genuine love of these singers throughout her life was so important to her.
And let's congratulate yourself on that there, because your incredible production of this album adds to all of that magic as well, and made all of us fall in love with it. The revamping of all the songs, the disco, the contemporizing everything adds to what you've just said. So a big a shout out to you as well, Steve, because you helped
Well,
with that.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I've said this before. It's just two friends like having so much fun, and that's kind of the basis of the record, and the fact that came across, and the fact that it did so well. And there's people that have obviously heard her in the band, who may not have heard the first solo album, who may be more aware of what she does now. So, and that's wonderful.
Just some other little. You may know this person. His name's John, but he calls himself DJ Argonaut. He runs Bar Kylie here in Melbourne.
Oh, what a dude! Love Argonaut.
He's gonna love that when he hears you say that. I happened to catch up with him on the Bar Kylie that just happened last week for Tension, and we say hello to each other. We know each other, we're friends, and he didn't know that I was interviewing you today. I told him after what he just told me, and he's like, he goes, Claire's album is so fucking good. The production on it is absolute perfection, but her vocals is just like phenomenal. Emulating everything you've just said on, over this last hour. But I just had to pass that on because I know that you know of him, and he gave such high praise for it, and I wanted to tell you.
Listen,
yeah.
And from him, that's amazing because he does incredible remixes.
He does.
He really. He's done some of my favorite. Like, he's done some incredible Kylie remixes that have never come out or never, But yeah, he's great. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that coming from him.
I guess we've talked a lot about Euphoria, and we've said thank you to all the fans and everything like that. But I guess, where do you think Claire might go next with her solo music? Have there been any discussions between the two of you on a dog walk, or making some chorizo eggies in the kitchen, like on what's going to happen after CR2?
Is there a tour, Steve? That's what everyone wants to know.
That's what we want to know. Are we manifesting a tour?
That would be lovely, wouldn't it? It would be fantastic. I've always said that I am kind of, we make the stuff, we don't sell the stuff. So it's like, I would love that as much as you would love that. It's certainly in other people's hands. If that can be a possibility, then I'm sure it will absolutely happen.
What would you envision if there was a show? How would you envision it to open? Like, what would you envision the opening song to be?
Oh gosh, I don't even like to think about it until someone tells me it's happening, because I'll run away with it.
It has to be. It has to open with Euphoria. It has to open with Euphoria.
And then I would get. Well, we open. So if you saw the Veer thing, so at the moment the Pride show's open with No More Tears.
Correct. Yep.
With the two backing singers taking load, which is really, really good. But yeah, I can't think about it. If someone tells me it's happening, I'll think about it. But if not, I'll just run away with myself, and I'll have the whole thing done, and then get disappointed if it doesn't happen.
I'm here to tell you it's happening.
Okay, thank you very much. Very kind.
No. I just quietly, I think Scott was also hoping for this as well. We were kind of quietly hoping that because Delta was touring the UK around the time that Claire was doing lots of media, that there might be like a cheeky little pop-up somewhere. I went and saw Delta in Birmingham, and I was like, come on, Claire, you're down the road, come up and just do No More Tears.
So Steve, you I don't know if you know this, but because I think you went to the London show, and a lot of people saw you in the audience and assumed Claire was going to come out, and it was online on the floor, everything, and then we were like, oh, it's going to happen, but it didn't happen.
No, I mean, I was there obviously to support Delta, and I was so super touched. If obviously you've seen the show, so you know that Delta ends with the version of Believe Again that we did together.
I'm fairly sure that version, she performed that last week, and I'm sure the version she did was your version, actually.
Oh, I mean, I didn't know that was going to happen. I really didn't know. I mean, I knew she had everything from me for it, but that really, I wasn't there for that. I was there for her. I'm a huge fan, but no, I think it would have been lovely for the girls to get together. I just think it was, timing wise, it was really, really tricky with both of their schedules. It sounds weird when they're both in the same town at the same time, but there's different things. And I think the night before that show, I think Claire had done GAY at Heaven, and that was a really, really late show, and yeah. It just didn't right. And I think Delta's show is Delta's show.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't rule it out for the future.
Okay.
I love Delta's show. I think that the single is one of the songs of the year, and just watching her like shine is just fills my heart with joy.
Before we kind of wrap up everything, one of the other things we wanted to touch on with you quickly was Brighton Pride, because that's obviously
Yes.
Steps did that a few months ago. And I think we need to start with everyone lost their mind because Tragedy, for the first time in, I want to say, 23 years since the Steps into Christmas tour, was not only was it not the encore, it was pretty much at the beginning of the show. So we want to know what was the thinking, because that's a massive statement to not end with Tragedy. I think people were quite shocked.
So I think, obviously we've talked a lot about Claire, and that is, I love, working that record's amazing, and we have that great thing. But I'm similarly super proud of the work that I do with Steps. I mean, you've got, that is, 5 people that are responsible for that, putting those shows, being on stage, putting those shows on. They all bring their own thing to it. It's incredible. People adore those 5. It's such an incredible love that people have for them. And I think Pride is a headline show. It was, I think they've said that they're going to take a little bit of a break at the moment, because it's quite a long time of stuff they were doing together with all the albums and stuff. So it felt like it needed to be the ultimate celebration. Brighton Pride, I've been lucky to work out a few times before. It's just I consider Brighton Pride to be our Sydney Mardi Gras. I really do. And but as far as the set list is concerned, I think you have to look at there's sort of different things in different audiences, and I think Steps, what's really clever about Steps, what I love about Steps, is that Steps have managed to have a second career with songs that are as strong, if not stronger, than the first. So they don't have to rely on always going back to the old songs at the end, because they do have this incredible catalogue, which is, down to their management and them and their choices of songs and songwriters. I mean, something like Scared of the Dark is just a complete classic, and can end a show as much as it can start a show. So I think the idea with Tragedy, I mean, sometimes there are times when you need to do that, but Brighton Pride felt like it didn't need to do that, and we had this whole other idea of how it would end, and just felt like it was the right time to do it, and I felt it was the right audience. I think we all felt like that audience wouldn't hear Tragedy and go, oh well, that's it now, we'll go home, because they knew what was left to come. Do you know what I mean? What an incredible show. The Saturday night of Brighton Pride, unfortunately for everyone that was there, it was raining, and it was like, oh gosh, it was awful, the weather was terrible. But then the Sunday was glorious, it was beautifully sunny, incredible acts on beforehand, and it was incredible. And Brighton Pride, the thing about Brighton Pride, for anyone that's never been, there's the kind of an audience that you see, and then there's some screens, and then there's an audience behind that audience, which is all the kind of families with kids, and kind of, they've got their tents and teepees up and stuff. And when I walked back from the front of house, the mixing desk, you see this whole other party that's going on behind the main party. And that's what is brilliant about Steps, is that Steps audience is completely inclusive across the board. You can be, H says it so perfectly, you can be anyone from anywhere. It's a safe space for everybody. And I love that band for that, to have that audience, and to be that for a 5-year-old kid dancing around, to like masses of people in the audience just living their best lives. So it's always super special at a Steps show, but Pride was really, really special.
I mean, with what you just said, and that band and everything that you have just said, resonates so much with Scott, Brad, and myself. I mean, we've touched on this in the podcast. You've listened before, our love for it. I'm not going to go into it too much, but the same thing. Love them. Like, I've grown up with them. They yeah, like we've grown up together, so I have such an adoration when I see Claire get emotional talking about her number two. I feel that same emotion because I'm proud of her with what she's achieved. To have you sort of explain a bit more of the inner workings of that just capsulates it and rounds it off even more. And so Brighton Pride was just like you said, that celebration. So I could see that as a fan, even though I wasn't there. I was like so upset I couldn't go, but it was really great to see. One of the things that we added to that set list was like Rain on Me and Unholy, and I love that those contemporary songs were added. Like especially Unholy is not a song you would expect Steps to cover or do. There was maybe a bit of talk that we were going to like cheekily, they were going to cover Padam Padam and be a bit more, what was going on. But I think that was just some stuff happening online of people just always talking about Kylie appearing everywhere. But did you approach them with those two tracks, or did they say, hey, we want to cover some songs, let's work out together? Or did they come up with those two songs?
Unholy was, so Frank Strachan is the creative director. He also works with Sam Smith. And but it was more to do with the fact that we probably think way too hard about this stuff, and it doesn't translate. But it was in the middle of Scared of the Dark and Better the Devil You Know. So we were going, it was quite lyrically, it fitted in that world of, scared, devil, unholy.
Yep.
That's how our brains work. I mean, but we knew that it couldn't be like, it would be weird to do the whole song. But it just felt like, gosh, if you did just a drop to a halftime kind of trap beat and Steps sang Unholy with like full out choreography, like Mark Jennings full out choreography, well, that would be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So we sold it to that. And initially I think it was like, really? Like there's things that we've done where we sort of try and sell these things, and it's a bit, initially they're like, okay, like even in the last tour when we did 5, 6, 7, 8 with that kind of the kind of break period, so okay, you're like, you just, and then all of a sudden they're like, right, okay, see it with the choreography and everything, and they get it. Rain on Me was, well, there's a few things. Again, it's Brighton Pride. Gosh, you've got to be so careful what you go and cover. But I think the moment Rain on Me came up, I think it was me or Adam or both of us, I think instantly there was like, Faye was like straight on board. I think Claire, they were all like, I think they were like, oh yeah, cool. And because it's a duet and it's not, again, iconic. If you talked about something like Padam Padam, that's one of those songs that's associated with one artist and can never really be covered. Whereas Rain on Me felt old enough, weird. I know it feels like it's still new, but it felt old enough to cover. I think it's really weird when you cover something that's out, unless you're going to do it like Unholy, where you just dip into a bit of it. But Steps, the 5 people in Steps are across every decision to do with their live shows. We can only bring things to the table and say, how about this? What do you think about this? I've done this. Do you like this idea? But ultimately, those 5 people have stood on those stages for all of those years. So there is nobody better to know what works with their audience than the 5 people on the stage. So we can only bring elements to it and try and give our very best to say, here are some options that we thought of. What do you think? And sometimes they'll get it. Sometimes, as I said, we have to push a little harder because we think eventually it will get there. But yeah, we're not on that stage. They're on that stage. They're who people came to see. We are there to support those 5 people, and that's our jobs. And make sure the audience have an amazing time.
Steve, I've actually always been quite curious because obviously you work with Steps, but you also work with Kylie. They both have a song called Better the Devil You Know. How, when you were doing a Step show and you're doing a Kylie show, is it really easy for you with that particular song to separate the two and look at them as 2 individual tracks? Like, this is a Kylie song, this is a Step song, and they're different? Or has there ever been times you've gone, do you know what I did for Kylie, I'll just copy paste and put that in the Step show? Like, how hard is it to kind of separate the two?
Yeah, I'd never do the copy paste thing. I think I'm very, very careful to make sure that the versions of that song that I've done with the 2 acts that have well, the person that recorded it originally and the people that covered it, they are always very, very different. They always have a different element to them. I think, there's a generation that's grown up that feel that the Steps version is the original version, just from a point of their age, which is kind of, totally fine. There's people that grow up that think that the Chain Reaction is a Steps song, and that's what happens. That's why people cover stuff. That's great. I love that. It reignites songs. But no, I've never. I'm always incredibly cautious to make sure that the versions that I do of that song for the two artists are wildly different. And actually, even down to the last version that we did, which was the sort of Shep Pettibone Vogue-esque one.
So good. That photograph was amazing.
Well, that was the band and Frank that wrote that, and it was such a genius little idea from them. But yeah, just no. So I'm super careful that we never go down the same. That they're definably different, and they are sort of definably different. One's by a 5-piece pop group, and one's by a female singer. So
speaking of Argonaut, at Bar, he's created. You said he's created like remixes and so forth. He's created a Steps versus Kylie Better the Devil You Know version, which I think is fundamentally mostly the instrumental version of the Steps version, and then Kylie's vocals on top with like a little bit. I need to hear it in a studio version. I've only ever heard it at a club. So
of course he has.
And he plays that specifically. If I walk into the club and he's on, he's like, "What do you want to hear?" I'm like, "John, I don't even need to tell you what I want to hear. You know what I want to hear." And he will. The next thing you know, there's the 25 version of Tragedy coming on. So it's funny because that version's really great. I was just thinking, with the Brighton show, and do you think that has inspired the band to think about other venues they haven't played at before? So like the Royal Albert Hall and other types of shows they could do, like maybe pare it back and have an orchestral moment or something like that. Has there already been any discussions or anything like that, or they're just on their break at the moment? Let's worry about that later. That's a tomorrow conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that currently they're having a very, very well-earned break. I mean, I love personally the idea of thinking about a Steps orchestrated show. I feel like their music is dramatically enough, and actually even when people have done orchestrated or orchestra versions of songs, it would work really, really well. I'm obviously very comfortable with those shows. I've done many of them before with symphony orchestras and pop stars, so it would be a wonderful thing to do at some point, if that's something that they were into. I think it would really, God, can you imagine Scared of the Dark with a symphony?
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Like,
but
actually,
I can, yes. I mean, I can say things and I can think things, but then other people have to do them, and make them happen. So I would love it, but I can't. But that would be down to whether or not it was the right thing to do at the time.
We love your versions of you talking about orchestral versions of Stare of the Dark, but I can't help but think of their intro to the Gold Tour, which was like an orchestral sort of the overture. Can you do a Steps 20
which tour?
The Gold Greatest Hits Tour, the one that they did in 2001?
That wasn't me.
No, I know that wasn't you. There was an overture.
Oh, I see.
Was
right.
At the start
right. Okay.
Can you do a Steve Anderson version of that, please?
We'll send you the link.
If it ever happens. Do you know what? You don't have to tell me. I was there. I did actually go to that tour. So now you're saying it, I do actually remember it. But yeah, I mean, look, there's lots of amazing things that would be wonderful to do one day, and maybe we will.
What's one of their songs you want to get your hands on that you haven't got your hands on yet? That you're just like, because I think you've got access to them all now, so you can probably do whatever you want. But cause I remember you saying before, when I got my hands on Tragedy, I was like,
I don't know. That's a really interesting question, because I think there's most of the really big songs I feel like have been done. I mean, if it was in a slightly different area, there could be more sort of deep cuts that you could kind of get into. But off the top of my head, there's not one that I can think. Well, I'll turn it around on you. What would you like me to? What's your suggestion?
Steve, I want an entire album of extended intros.
If you had to pick one Steps track that I haven't gone anywhere near.
That you haven't gone anywhere near. Oh God, you're putting me on the spot now. Last,
I know, it's
have you done Last
tough,
Thing on My
isn't it?
Mind? Have you done anything with that?
Yes. Well, actually, to be fair, there's a few Step songs that we don't go full out on.
Yeah.
Like, we kind of keep a lot of the original thing. So no, I haven't actually done a rework of Last Thing.
Last Thing
So
would
yeah,
be
possibly that would be a good one.
that would be for me. Like Last Thing has
Yeah.
a big spot in my heart. So yeah.
Well, we revisited because Step One turned 25, so we revisited that album recently for the podcast, and Back to You, that is on that album. That would be something that I would love to see you revisit.
Okay.
And if Brad was here, he would say track 7 on Step
Track
1,
7,
which would be experienced.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Of course he would.
Steve, I just had one more. This isn't Steps related, but you're on my Zoom. I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
I mentioned Dangerous Game at the start of the call. Another song that was a big part of my life is I'm a massive Atomic Kitten fan, and you obviously co-wrote with Kylie Feel So Good, which they ended up recording and naming their second album after. I've just always been curious as to how it ended up with them. How did that come about?
Excellent question. We wrote it in, oh gosh, I don't even remember what album it would have been for. I mean, the thing is, we never used to write stuff for albums. We just used to write songs, and they ended up wherever. I know we wrote it at Real World, possibly around the same time as we were writing things like Harmony and those kind of songs that ended on B-sides. I don't know. I think it wasn't gonna go on a Kylie record, and I guess what usually happens is a publisher ends up playing it to someone and saying, well, this is available, and it just felt like the right fit for the girls, and then they very kindly asked me to produce it, and you know, and that's great. And Tasha from the Kittens is just the most insane singer.
Yeah,
I mean, again, talk about that, you know, underrated. Gosh, Tasha, I think she's got a new record coming out or out.
Yeah, she recorded a new album, and because she just had a baby, so I think it's been paused. But I think she said it's coming out next year.
Yeah, so I knew that it was going to be great, and Liz is great and stuff. So yeah, it was that, I think. But again, I think it's one of those things where there's been a few times where there's been songs that have been written. What happens all the time? Songs written for one thing, and then it's not quite right, and then it gets heard by someone else, and it's right for them. And you know, and you know, it was a great record. They made some fantastic singles, the girls. Yep. You know, really, really good. And again, it's really always nice to see them in whichever incarnation of them that are out. Do you know what I mean? It's lovely seeing these people, like, you know, even at Brighton Pride, you know, it's like Bewitched are back out now. That's fantastic. You know, and there's all the, you know, S Club are back out. It's just lovely to see. And it's not always, you know, yes, predominantly is the audience that were there for the first time, but you know, I'm incredibly lucky that I'm the musical director for Westlife as well. And you know, when you see these people at the shows, it's not just the original fans. There's a lot of younger fans that are there and really appreciative of what they did, and it's not old-fashioned. Do you know what I mean? It still feels fresh,
Current. Yeah.
So yeah, I think so. Yeah. So, but yeah, that was that one. I think it turned out pretty good, actually. The Kittens record as well.
Oh yeah, it's a great. I mean, I think the Kylie version leaked. I've heard that somewhere. I think on YouTube, but the Kitten version is incredible, and yeah, they named the whole album after it. So they, you know.
Bless them. Lovely.
Well, I guess we kind of know the answer to this, but what's next for you coming up for the rest of the year? You don't have to tell us details, but you can give us like an overarching. Are you popping off to Vegas at all or anything like that? Or
yeah. So yeah, we're that's my current job at the moment is putting the Kylie Voltaire Vegas show together with the incredible creative team and the people over there. It's tremendously exciting, and yeah, I can't wait for everyone to see it and it be a reality.
I am not lucky enough to have a ticket, but a friend of mine won a competition here in Australia and is going to see her on the 9th of December. He won it off Sunrise, and he's a massive Kylie Minogue fan. He calls himself O Minogue on online. You may have seen comments of him before, but he will be seeing her. So I'm very happy that's a real, true, proper Kylie fan who won that competition who gets to see it. So I cannot wait for a full report from him about it all.
Oh, well, listen, congratulations. I'm so happy on that. And also just, you know, talking about Kylie fans, I'm also one. And how good is Tension
Oh,
as an album?
stop it. It's so good. Story. I'm obsessed with
Story.
I started off loving Hold On To Now, which I love.
Oh, I
and
love
then
that song.
Things We Do For Love, and then obviously Vegas High, and even You Still Get Me High. But the last 6 days, I just can't stop listening to Story. As maybe I was listening to it a bit before, and then I saw her perform it at the O2, and like just on YouTube, and I was just like, wow, this.
That was so emotional because the lyrics of that song are so incredible.
Yeah.
And it was that's the first time that she and the band had ever performed that song. And yeah, it was wow. It's just extraordinary. I'm so proud of her for this record. It's, you know, easily one of my favorites.
I just love seeing it's really such a resurgence with Kylie at the moment. It really feels like the Fever era to me, I would say. It's like a Fever era 2.0. It's incredible.
It's fantastic. So yeah, really looking forward to that. And there's a couple of other bits. I've sort of very much back in Kylie world for a little while. So, and loving it.
Well, good luck with it all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to Claire. Please pass on our love and congrats to her with that. When you go for a dog walk next, tell her that we love the album. We have appreciated. We have got the message that she was trying to convey when she put that album out. And we obviously love Steps and everything like that. And we wish you all everything. Good luck with Vegas coming up. And thanks for joining us today on our little podcast. We're glad that you're a fan.
Well, thanks for asking. I am a fan, absolutely. And keep up the good work. And, you know, it's great to celebrate, you know, this incredible legacy of this band, and all of the people within the band and everything that they've done together and individually. And it's always love talking to kind of real fans of people, and you're doing something that it's you know, I have a little podcast called Such a Good Feeling where I talk to various people, and I just do it because I love it. But you know, it's so nice, and you must have the same thing where people tell you that you're just helping provide a little bit of history which may not necessarily be out there, and it's like a little kind of podcast Wikipedia. So and our friend Gavin, who we spoke about before, is doing the same thing with his Sorg podcast, and you know, the This Is Disco people. It's a really good medium. It's a long form medium, and people just want to hear kind of those behind the scenes things, and they might be fun, they might be not interesting, they might be super techie or nerdy, but I listen to podcasts for that reason, to get something out of them. So thanks for doing it for everyone.
Thank you very much. I mean, that just resonates exactly with what I said, didn't I, Scott? I say you've got Steps themselves promoting their work. You've got Ultimate Steps and Claire Richards Central promoting all the stuff, and that's more like Instagram and visuals and stuff. But then you've got our podcast. We're the voice. We're the ones talking about it. So we just compliment all the others. So thank you. I'll take that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone's working together to just make sure that the legacy is kept up. And you know, I mean, dare I even say, I feel like I'm doing my Eliza Day impression at the moment, but dare I say what the future holds? Because Eliza loves a pun. But who knows what's next? I thought you were going to say something about an event that happens in Sydney in sort of
stop.
Maybe
stop.
not.
I would love an event that would happen in Sydney, but I wish I knew what the future.
Well, hold on. I know that we were ending, but we're just going to circle back for 1 second because yes, we didn't speak about that. Tell us how you've tried to. We need to get Steps at Mardi Gras. How do we make this happen, Steve?
It's down to you two. I'm fully putting you in charge of it.
All right.
You are in charge of the manifestation campaign to get Steps to Australia.
Okay.
We will manifest
no
hard
pressure,
for that.
No pressure, boys. No pressure at all.
No pressure. Okay. All right. Who do I know? I do know some people that work for
like, who do we know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've done a few of them, but
maybe I can.
That would be quite something.
I work for Arts Centre Melbourne here in Melbourne, and maybe I can pressure the programming team to do like a one-night show at Hamer Hall or something like that, just to get them to Melbourne, and then there we go.
There you go.
Okay, all
right. Now you're thinking. This is how things happen.
Okay, all right.
I'll leave it with you.
All right. Challenge accepted.
Thank you.
Wow, that was incredible. Shane, you've got a big job on your hands now. You've been officially challenged by the wonderful, amazing Steve Anderson.
This is true. I need to get Steps to Australia. I mean, I've been already trying to do this, but the ante has been upped now, and I need to get them here to Australia. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to win the lottery, and I'm going to be the promoter that brings them out. Maybe that's how I'm going to make it happen, but challenge accepted. So after all that, I just want to say a really big thank you to Steve Anderson for taking the time out to have a chat with Scott and I about Claire's album and Steps and the music world. Don't you worry, Steve. We're going to have you back on again when we talk about tours, that's for sure. But really appreciate it. And we love that you're a fan of the pod. Pinch me moment.
I also just want to say, if you haven't had a listen to it yet, Frankie Knuckles' version of Unbreak My Heart is a banger. Steve mentioned that in the interview, and I have since added that into my playlist rotation. So amongst all other things, I need to thank Steve for that.
Mm-hmm. As does the Steve Anderson DMC version of Xanadu that I talked about in the interview. That is also an absolute banger. I think that brings us to the end of the episode, Brad. Before we go, we just want to highlight a couple little panto things coming up for a few of our Steps members. Lee's going to be in Snow White at the Redditch Palace Theatre. Tickets available at the redditchpalacetheatre.co.uk. Snow White plays from the 8th of December to the 3rd of Jan. Faye's appearing as the Magical Mermaid at Peter Pan at the Bristol Hippodrome. Tickets available at atgtickets.com from the 2nd to the 31st of December.
And finally, we have H, who will be doing a voiceover for Elves Overboard as part of Cowbridge Panto. That runs the 16th to the 24th of December, and tickets are available at cowbridgepanto.com.
You can find us anywhere on the socials at Glitter Steps Pod, Instagram, X, you name it, we're on it. You can find me at Stepmeister on Instagram and StepmeisterOZ on Twitter, X, whatever you call it. Brad, where can they find you?
They can find me at Brad Schmerling on Instagram.
And you can find Scott at StepsCollection_ on Instagram as well. But until next month, we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
See you soon, guys. Bye.
Bye.